Hello, everyone. Wir sind klar, anzufangen. We're ready to start. So my name is Steve Haas. I'm going to start in English for those of you who don't understand Low German or don't understand it very well. I am a veterinarian in Pontiac, Illinois. I grew up in Gilman, Illinois, not far north of here, and grew up also, my dad's side was all East Frisian and farmers, and had an interest in learning Low German at a young age. When I heard grandparents and relatives speaking it and not knowing they were talking about us and wanting to figure out what they were saying. So I learned it from my grandma and a few others over the years, and have always been passionate and excited about that, especially also my grandfather came over relatively late, and that allowed us to remain in closer contact with some relatives in Germany. So today, as many of you know, we have a wonderful person here with us today. She's with us this week, actually, and her name is Maike Rocker. She is from Hazel, Ostfriesland, and she will tell you more about that. But she is a PhD student from Penn State University, and she's helping us all here, and those even whom are not here, to record in Low German. So without saying much more, I'll let her introduce herself further, and she's going to give you guys a presentation over the work that she is doing.
Thank you.
Moin miteinander. Ik kom hierher. Ik ben vandaag hier om een beetje Platt te praten en een beetje te vertellen van mijn leven. Closer? Oh, even better. Okay, moin miteinander. Ik ben Maike en ik ben vandaag hier om een beetje Plattdeutsch te praten en een beetje te vertellen van mijn leven en wat ik zo maken doe. And so that you guys don't feel left out if you don't speak the Low German, or if I speak a little differently than you do, I'll be switching back and forth between Low German and English. So, to start with, wo kom ik denn eigentlich her? Ik ben van Ostfriesland, ik ben van Germany. Und Ostfriesland, als je weten, is in the north van Deutschland, here. Very close to the Dutch border. That's where Frisia is, and that's where I come from. Where I exactly come from is hier. Mijn ouderen sind uit Tannenhausen und Dietrichsfeld. Mijn moeder is een N und mein vader is een Rocker. Und ich bin auch ein Rocker. Und hier die zwei Lütje Gelpunkten, dort. Dat is waar mijn ouderen her sind, uit Auwek. Ik ben in Neufeen, close to Hazel, opgewachsen. Und dat is tussen Leer und Auwek. Und ich bin in Leer not school gone. Quick translation, my parents are from the area close to Aurich. I was born in Aurich as well, but I grew up close to Hazel in a small village called Neufeen, and I already heard some people know some people there, and I actually know the house where they know the people there. And I went to school in Leer, which is about 25 miles from where I grew up. Now, this is my family. It's hard to see. Mein Vater, mein Mutter und mein Lütjebror, my little brother who's been towering over me ever since I was 4 and he was 2 maybe. Und mein Ollen, die praten Platt. Und die haben bloß Plattdeutsch Brot, wenn sie in School gehen. Und in School haben sie dann Hochdeutsch lehrt. So like many of you here, I've heard these stories, oh, I couldn't speak any English when I came to school. That was my parents' story. Now my parents are still a little younger. My dad turned 60 in October, and my mom is a little younger. She wouldn't like me telling you how old exactly she is, but she's a little younger than that. And in Ostfriesland, in that generation, it was still very normal for people their age to grow up speaking only Low German and then learning High German in school. The generation kind of that followed my parents, the people who are now in their 40s, from then on it was kind of stigmatized to speak the Low German. So a lot of people actually at that time didn't teach it to the kids anymore, but my parents and older, they all speak it, and my parents still spoke it at home. So when I grew up, we spoke Low German and High German in our house. Now my brother and I think, are a bit better in the High German than we are in the Low German, but we can still talk it a little bit. So we can noch ein bisschen Plattdeutsch sprechen. So after high school, I went to the University of Bremen. And there I wanted to be a Mester, a teacher. I studied German and English, and then I did my bachelor's first, then I did my master's. And during my master's I found, boy, it's really hard to teach those kids, especially when they're like 13 to 15 and they really don't want to be there. And I found that I love teaching, but I like teaching when the people want to be there. So I decided I would be a teacher at a university so that I could teach German, one of my native languages, and I wouldn't have to worry about anybody telling me I don't want to do the homework or I don't want to be here. Then I can say, okay, go grab a coffee, that's cool with me. I don't mind, because students decide themselves what they want to do at the university. So to do that, I went first to Canada, to the University of Waterloo, and later on to SUNY Binghamton, the State University of New York in upstate New York. And actually in Canada was where I first met Amish and Mennonite people. And I was so enamored, and I was so, I don't know, just fascinated by the fact that people in Canada and in America still speak some variety of German. And so I thought, that's really cool, I really want to do that. But I don't really understand Mennonite and Amish Pennsylvania Dutch too well. So I thought, maybe I should go back to where I came from, back to my roots, and do the Plattdeutsch that I had learned. So with that, I went to the Pennsylvania State University. And there I had to do courses first. So when you do a PhD, our program is 5 years. And I had to do 3 years of courses where I learned about linguistics and all the background, how language works, what the different parts of language are, and also how to do my research, how to find the people and interview the people and work with the stuff that I learned from them. So that's what I did for 3 years, and in the same time I already started doing projects. And now I'm in my 4th year, I have 1 more year to go, and then I have to be done with my dissertation. Now, I have done a lot of different projects. I have worked with different groups that speak different varieties of German. My very first one, so here you see where Penn State is. This is University Park State College is what it's called. That's where the campus is. It's between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Basically, in the middle of nowhere, you will find a town, and that's State College, and that's where our university is. Okay, back to the projects I've done. This was the very first one I did in Ohio, and this is with Amish and Mennonite people. And here, so they had a little heritage center. We did a couple of experiments on the computer where people had to tell us whether they liked or disliked certain parts and languages and sentences that we did. So sometimes we will ask people, would you say this or would you say that, to find out how their language has developed. And we did that very specifically with a computer experiment in Ohio. And one of my favorite stories there, I actually got to ride in a front loader, and I loved that. And the best part about it was that the person who drove me around was a 7-year-old boy. So he had been hanging out with me. I was outside waiting for my co-researchers to do other things, and he had been hanging out with me. And he wanted to go to this front loader and drive me around. And I told him, no, you're a 7-year-old boy. Like, I don't think this is a good idea. So we waited, and finally his dad came out after he was done with what we had asked him to do. And the boy asked his dad, Dad, can I drive that front loader? And the dad said, yeah, you always do that. Why do you ask? You normally don't even ask. And so he drove me around in the front loader a little bit. So I have a big love for big machinery, as I will tell you a little later as well. So the front loader was great. I was very happy about that. The next project that I did is also very interesting. So the next project was in the Dominican Republic. And you guys all know about German history, the Holocaust, the Nazi persecution of Jewish Germans, and you also know that a lot of Jews fled Germany. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that a couple of them actually went to the Dominican Republic. So in 1939, there was a big conference in France, and the only country that offered to take Jewish refugees was the Dominican Republic. They offered to take on 100,000 people, but because they wanted farmers, they wanted to have a new plantation, and they wanted to have a commune that would be self-sustained, it was very hard to find candidates who would be able to do the work that they wanted them to do. Plus, I mean, in 1940, 41, it was very hard to get visa, to get out of Germany. And a lot of the people we spoke to, their parents were actually in concentration or internment camps. And so instead of 100,000, only 700 actually made it to the Dominican Republic. But they founded this little town, they founded a dairy produce company, they founded little farms, and some of them actually stayed. So nowadays in Sosua, it's a big, big tourist place. So there are a lot of hotels, bars, restaurants, and there is still a little synagogue, which you see here. Obviously, beautiful beaches, great for surfing, which I tried and miserably failed at as well. And this is kind of hard to see. This is street art where somebody wrote some Hebrew and Yiddish terms onto a street lamp. So a lot of them are actually now in the United States, so we can speak English with them. They also still speak German, so the people we talked to grew up in Sosua, and they also speak Spanish. So we have a very interesting community that speaks 3 languages. Now, these 2 projects I did, and it was fun, and I really enjoyed it, but it's not really where my heart is. So that's why, finally, I went first to Iowa. And in Iowa, as some of you, or most of you might know, there are also East Frisians. So around the Grundy Center, Wellsburg area, those towns were settled by East Frisians first. And so here in the middle, you see the East Friesland Kark, which I first visited in November, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, here in Flatville, there are at least like 5 other houses around, right? This year, there's only this church. And I went there in November, and you see it had snowed, it was icy, and I was there with my little car. I was so afraid I was gonna go into a ditch, and I would never be able to come out again. And finally, after going down 4 miles the road, and I was like, I'm wrong here, I'm totally wrong, this is just cornfields. There's the church, and it was beautiful. And on that church cemetery, you could actually find a lot of East Frisian names. So that's where I started trying to find people. The other 2 pictures here, this is a dear friend of mine who I also interviewed, Evelina Cruz, who speaks Low German. She's 91, and that was really awesome. And over here, this is Rick Gersema, who has collected the old East Frisian newspapers. Now, in 1882 is when that newspaper was founded in Iowa, and it was specific to the East Frisians, and it was sent out all across the Midwest and all across the United States. And it was published for almost 90 years. So this newspaper is actually very rare. So if any of you have one of these, they are amazing. They are actually very, very rare, so you should hold on to them. And Rick has actually collected a lot of them, and we're right now trying to get them digitized, get them on the internet, so that people can actually read them. The cool thing about this newspaper is that it's mainly written in High German, but there's also some Low German in there. So later on in the 40s and 50s, a lot of people didn't know the High German well enough anymore, but they still knew the Low German, like a lot of you. So that is when they put more Low German stories into the newspaper, and also people wrote in Low German and in High German. So you will find letters by people written in both languages. There's no English in it, almost nothing, maybe a few words, something that you would use in your Low German as well, like a car or driven, something like that. But apart from that, it's only Low German and High German. So yeah, I've been trying to get this going. It's been fun. It's a really great newspaper. So, of course, as a researcher, I hope to be a professor one day. So we'll see about that. I have to write articles about the stuff that I do, about the research that I do. So these are the articles I've written so far, mostly concentrating on language shift or language maintenance, how the language has survived so long. Why is it that almost 100 or over 150 years later, after the first settlers came, that we still find people speaking the Platt? Because usually when immigrants come, it is said that within 3 generations, they lose their language. Usually the 3rd generation, the grandkid generation, they don't speak their grandparents' language anymore. But here I hear a lot of people saying, oh, it was my great-grandfather who came from Germany, and they still speak the language. So all of these articles that I have written either focus on that newspaper I talked about, or on the question why it is that people are still using the language. Now, there has also been a little bit of interest about me, which I'm okay speaking to people, but I'm not a big media person. So I was always a little hesitant, but last year I kind of cracked down, and now there have been a couple of newspaper articles, which is great because that's how I found Steve, and that's why I'm here. So before I only concentrated on the Iowa East Frisians, but because I had these articles about me in the newspaper, Steve had it sent to you.
Right, yeah, friends and relatives.
Yes, by friends and relatives in Ostfriesland, and he reached out to me on Facebook and said, I wanted to do this project for so long.
Along with Brian.
Along with Brian, of course. You need to come. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I've arrived on Thursday after a long drive from Pennsylvania, and we have already interviewed a couple of people, and we hope to interview more people about the Low German and what it was like growing up here. So that on the left is Chris Rocker, who is 102, and he was very excited to meet me, and he asked, I think 3 times how many rockers there still are in Germany, and there still are a lot. There's a big rocker family in Ostfriesland. And then Shirley, I took a picture with Shirley. I took a picture of you, I took a picture of you playing the organ, and I think that's one of my favorite pictures ever. So yeah, I'll send it to you later. So one of the things I'm doing right now, and might not be the best thing to see here, I'm actually starting to not only talk to people who speak the Low German, but also to people who don't speak it anymore, but feel East Frisian and want to identify with the East Frisian community and with the East Frisian identity. So if you're interested in doing a survey, this is where you need to go. I can send that out later or leave it on later. All you need to do is take a picture of that, and that will lead you to the online survey. And you can also print it out and do it by hand. So here I'm trying to find out how I can think about Low German in the future. What's going to happen to this community in the future? Are your kids and grandkids still going to speak it? Probably not so much, but they will probably identify with being East Frisian and being German, and maybe have some other traditions, some food, some songs, some rhymery, something that you taught them and that still makes them feel East Frisian. So that's something I'm working on right now. And with that, I want to finish my little presentation here. I'm very happy to answer any questions and show you one of my favorite pictures of Iowa, where I rode a little tractor. It was just a lawnmower, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited that I was told I can drive a real tractor on Monday. That's gonna be great. Thank you very much.